Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. P here. Today we're going to focus on learning about how to properly format quotations and dialogue. This is really important because when we write papers, we want to make sure that we can provide evidence to support any claim that we make, and one way to do that is to provide quotations. So we're going to practice some skills today. What we're going to focus on is a few steps. We're going to identify first what is the tagline of a quotation, and that's simply who is speaking. So an example would be Yasmin said or replied Juan. So whenever we're looking at these, we want to first look for the tagline. Okay. Once we've done that, we want to make sure that we select the quoted words, and that's simply the words that are spoken or written by the author or the speaker, and we're going to surround those next with quotation marks. Okay. Once we've surrounded those words with quotation marks, we can move on to making sure that we have everything capitalized and punctuated properly. Okay, we always want to capitalize the first word inside a quotation mark when it's the first word of a sentence. You can think of the quotation as sort of the start of a new sentence there. And I'll show you here today how to properly punctuate these quotations. Okay, now there are three types of taglines. Remember, that's who is speaking or doing the writing. The first one is simply when we do the tagline before the quote. You've definitely seen this in stories that you've read, okay? When we do this, the comma always follows the tagline, and the beginning letter of the quote is always going to be capitalized. So let's try a couple examples. First, let's look at Emily said, let's go to the store. So the first thing I think is, what's the tagline? And that's clearly Emily said. Okay, that tells us who is speaking. Okay. Then what I did was I looked for, okay, what words are actually being said? Well, she obviously said, let's go to the store. So I put a quotation mark at the beginning and at the end. Okay. And now I moved on to my next rule, which is separate the tagline from what is said with a comma. Okay. This comma goes simply after the Emily said, and then we capitalize the let's go to the store, the L in let's. Okay. That's the beginning of our new sentence. Then what we do is we put a period at the end. Okay, the period here always goes inside of the quotation whenever it's at the end of a quoted section. So this is the end of our sentence. We put a period to close it out. Okay, we're going to pause here and give you a chance to do a couple practice problems during class. Okay. All right, now that you've had a chance to look at those practice problems and talked about the correct answers with your group and with Mr. P, we're going to talk about the second rule today, which is when the tagline is after the quote. Okay, again, tagline, who's doing the speaking or the writing, and we can actually put these after the quote as well. Okay, now here's what the rule is. The ending punctuation after the actual quote can never be a period, okay, because it's not the end of the actual sentence. Let's take a look at an example here. I need to get some new shoes, replied Miles. Well, what's the tagline? It's obviously replied Miles. He's replying to someone about what he needs to get. So we've identified the tagline, and then we identify what did he actually say? Well, he said, I need to get some new shoes. That's the information he was trying to pass along. Okay? So again, we separate or surround that quotation with the quotation marks. These are the words that he says. Okay? Now when we look at our rule, the ending punctuation after the actual quote or before the tagline can't be a period. This is not the end of our sentence. It's certainly the end of what he said, but it's not the end of our sentence. So this needs to be a comma. And again, we do that inside of the quotation mark. Okay? When punctuation, a comma or a period, is at the end of a quoted section, we need to make sure that it stays inside of the quotation mark. Okay? And then after the tagline, this is actually the end of the full sentence. We put that period to close it out. Okay? So we're going to give you a chance to do a couple more practice problems here. Now one more rule, an exception actually to that last rule, is when we have a question or an exclamation, okay, we need to put those directly after the quote and not after the tagline. Okay? So for example, what is being asked by Jasmine? Well, she asked, what kind are you going to buy? That's her question. So we put the question mark here, right at the end of her question. Again, that punctuation is at the end of a quoted section, so we put it inside of the quotation marks, and then at the very end we put a period. Okay? This is an example right here with an exclamation point, and Mr. P will discuss this further with you at this point.